Hey, it's Jacket. It is finally time. We're one day away from the patch. The day is July 17, 2023, and tomorrow we're going to get some patch notes from Blizzard. So I thought, what a worse time to drop some build. Just kidding. What I want to do is go ahead and give you guys my notes and my overview of all of my time played across all of my Necromancers and all the details that I've done on my summons. And this will be a full-on video for the 5 builds that I have kind of given a lot of thought through. Some builds we were able to get the Golem to do 1.3 million damage. Some builds we were able to get the Mages to do 1.3 million damage. It is a lot of investment. It's taken quite some time to even get to those numbers, a lot of testing, a lot of data. So I wanted to go in and share my knowledge and my findings with everyone else. So hopefully maybe someone better than me can come up with a better build. Maybe the patch notes tomorrow will make our minions even better and stronger, and we can just use these same builds. I'm really hoping that's the case. But I did want to just add that bit of a disclaimer before we start. And so let's go ahead and talk about those builds now. So I have 5 builds that all use minions, and they each have a bit of a different focus. There are 2 of them that are kind of the same. It's my recommended build, and that build comes with a hardcore variant. So, taking a look, we have our original Minionmancer build. This is using some things like Bone Spear and Ring of Mendeln to kind of amplify our own damage and give us a bit of player agency on top of having our minions do the brunt of our work for us. So those minions are going to be able to go in, do a bunch of damage on their own, give us some like 200, 300k hits consistently from the mages, and then we're able to just go ahead, get them large number hits from the Ring of Mendeln, and really just bring it on home. We're tanky as heck in this build. You're rarely at risk of dying unless you're doing about an 80 plus, but at that point, everything is a one shot if you don't know that already. When you're doing those higher tier Nightmare dungeons, it's really kill or be killed. And so that's where this build does fall off. But it is completely viable up to 80. You're able to do plenty of content with your friends. You can even hard carry them as well. It's very fun through leveling, and I have a whole leveling series utilizing this Minionmancer build. So let's talk about it for a second. Starting with the aspects, we have a few here that are kind of no-brainers. We have Aspect of Disobedience. You need this to be extra defensive. Protecting Aspect stops the one-shots from coming through, and this will always leave you with some HP, as long as it's not a damage over time effect. We have Reanimation to do our minion damage even more. Grasping Veins is important because this is going to buff our damage, the Ring of Mendeln's damage, and the minion's crit chance and crit damage as well, so when they are able to crit, they are going to hit much higher. The Viscous Aspect on the necklace to get that extra mage because we're relying on them to do more damage, and the math actually turns out where having an extra mage is better than having an extra 15% damage from the animation aspect. And then we are taking the Splintering Aspect to make sure that Bone Spear is a very good, reliable source of quick 100k damage, as well as applying Vulnerable for the entire time that we want Vulnerable to be up, making it so that our mages do even more damage. Going over the skills, these are my preferred order of these skills on the bar. Please use them however you see fit, wherever it's most comfortable for you. We have Raised Skeleton, because we need it for the warrior and mages. Corpse Tendrils, Golem, because you have to have it to raise Golem. Blood Mist, Bone Spear, and Decrepify. We'll be going over the individual selections here shortly in the skill page. We're using the upgrade 2 for the Reapers, so that they have a 15% chance to carve flesh off the enemy to give us corpse. This is our main source of corpse generation, and they do it often. It's very good, very reliable. We're taking upgrade 1 to make sure that our mages are not hurting themselves too much, and that they are also doing 40% increased damage when they've been alive for 5 seconds, which, if you're spamming Raised Skeleton enough, we'll go over in the rotation section, it'll be something that they'll be alive from the majority of the combat. And then we're taking Blood Golem absorbs 15% of our damage. It's no-brainer. It's so good. This build is so tanky. You're very rarely going to die. even that plus 15 content. You can just walk through the 65s. And I have all of the gear stats written out here, so you don't have to worry about what you're looking at. You can have this page on your second monitor or phone, and you can just look through your items and just kind of delete whatever you don't see here. And I have them order from top to bottom of what is the best for you. So if you have something that has total armor on the helmet, but none of these three, and you don't have total armor on your current helmet, then I would recommend equipping that helmet. And then kind of filling in the stats as you go, and then working on perfecting each stat after you get a 4-stat item. Anything to call out here specifically? You want to make sure that your necklace has Hellbent Commander and total armor. These two are a must. Have to have these two. You're missing 30% multiplicative damage for Hellbent Commander when standing near your mages. It's just something you have to have in the necklace. If it doesn't have both of these, then it really doesn't matter what the other stats are. You really need both of these in the necklace. So moving on to the skill tree. I have the leveling path out for you for anyone who wants to take this into Season 1 and level up your character. Yes, you will be able to level with this build. As I have in my leveling playthrough, we're doing the entire campaign, so even the people who have to deal with very tough bosses can go through it and level up their character. And take a glance at it. At the end, we're getting rid of our necrotic carapaces for an extra thing of Bone Spear, so Bone Spear can do just a bit more damage, as necrotic carapace will stack up anyways at the rate of the corpse generation from the Reapers. Paragon, this is something I want to talk about. I hope that Diablo 4 builds will implement something that we can kind of give a highlighted path of what we would recommend. But for now, I'm going to do my best in this video. So what I would recommend is getting access to your main glyphs here. So what I would recommend is going through here and getting your main glyphs. So some of the main glyphs, you just take Amplify, put it in here. We'll go up the damage route because early on you don't need that much defense. You're going to follow this route up through the Dead Razor glyph. You want to make sure you grab all of these nodes first, but not the connection nodes, so just these nodes here. And then you want to head up through here. And this is where I messed up a little bit earlier, so I want to share that advice with you guys. Get the Cult Leader legendary node as soon as you can. This is such a huge damage increase early on. We're using all three minion types. It's 45% increased damage for all of your damage, and it's multiplicative. So after that, I'd have you go up here into the Flesh Eater board. And then I would recommend getting Mage. And by this point, you should have enough Paragon points where filling out the board is going to be a bit better now. You're going to want to go in and fill out some important nodes. So you want to make sure Dead Razor is 15. Then you want to make sure that your Mage glyph is 15. And then you want to fill out the Mage glyph. This is going to give you the most damage for short-term investment. Then I would recommend coming over here to get the Corporeal buff from the glyph. Getting the Flesh Eater node and the Scent of Death nodes. Just filling out this whole board, getting the armor as well. And then you should be closer to the late game here. And this is where we're going to ignore this track for now. We're going to ignore this track for now. You really want to come over here and get Exploit. Really important that you do get Exploit. The minions get 100% of the value from vulnerable targets. So all your vulnerability damage gets on their damage, and it is insane. And then the last thing, you'll come down here and finish off with this control node on the Hulking Monstrosity board. We're not getting Hulking Monstrosity. The Golem is not the main source of our damage. We could probably grab it and fill in some more, but then we would want to have the Golem glyph, and if things get a little complicated, we got to focus on one minion or the other, it seems. So this is the Paragon board, and that's what I would recommend. And as always, we have some notes here for you. We have some rotation notes, Paragon order, really anything that you need. So just make sure you check out the page and have it up while you're playing. Onto the hardcore version of our Minionmancer. So this is the one we don't want to die. Everything is pretty much the same. All the aspects in the same slots. Skill tree is in the same slots. Paragon nodes are in the same slots. And pretty much the only thing you're going to want to change is that if you get a razor plate, the unique chest piece that is only thorns, I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but I would recommend wearing it. And we have shuffled around where the defensive aspects are going to account for this if you do get one. You will drop Aspect of Heart and Bones for a razor plate, and there is only one reason for it. If you are doing normal content, if you were doing below level 60 Nightmare Sigils, 65 Nightmare Sigils, everything is going to kill themselves with Thorn. They're going to attack your mobs, your minions, and they're just going to go splat. It is a fantastic conjunction onto the build because your minions are able to go ahead and spread it out so much more. And so I would very much so recommend it. And the only other thing you also may notice is that Intercom is here instead of the Ring of Mendeln. I still recommend the Ring of Mendeln, but I wanted to make sure that this has no uniques on this page so that you can do it in hardcore. I know it can be very hard to and disorienting to keep resetting, like, oh, what was that aspect? I don't know. I don't have the ring anymore if you die. So I made sure to have it no uniques, and in the notes, we call out the uniques here. So that's super important. And this build you can thank Reddit for. So I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people on Reddit sharing out what I found and what I thought was one of the better minion builds. And a lot of people really didn't like that Ring of Mendeln was part of it, even though that is your damage in association with having 7 minions alive. And they didn't consider that to be part of a minion build. And, I was like, okay, that's fine. That's a fair argument. And then they said Bone Spear is in your build. So you're just using a watered down Bone Spear build. Which is really funny because, just because you use a spell doesn't mean it's a build for that spell. You could argue that every single Barbarian build is a Shout build and not a Whirlwind build or a Ren build. This is how this build was born. This build can make it so that your mages can do almost 1.3 million damage. And I got those numbers without even having perfect legendary aspects. And this is what I'm so excited to share with everyone because it was through a lot of testing, it was through a lot of pain and suffering, 100 million gold plus spent on this build alone, trying to figure out what makes minions tick, what make them work. Please watch my previous videos if you have any questions about exactly which values are better. We have some shorts explaining some things. We have one 20-minute long video talking about exactly what impacts the minions. So we have some cool things here. We're still using the viscous aspect on the necklace. Grasping veins, reanimation, these all look very familiar. But we're making sure to get aspect of the void in the build because it's a permanent CC where we can be pulling things together. And when they're pulled together, we can hit them with our vulnerability for corpse tendrils, which gives us the grasping veins buff, which make our minions hit an insane amount. Using the blighted aspect here because we will be taking Shadow Blight, and Blight will stack up Shadow Blight fairly quickly, especially at higher end content. You may not even notice it. You can even use Frenzied Dead if that's something you feel like you'll get a better benefit from for a little bit more attack speed. I hear that one is bugged currently if it's on the same target. So Blighted was the best one we had right now. We're using the same minion combination because it's still a minion build. The only thing that's different on these bars is the Blight. And you'll also notice that all of these are all the same, except for one key thing. Damage to affected by shadow damage over time. This multiplier is one of the largest numbers for the additive damage pools. You're always going to want to have lead on them as they're giving 15% damage increase, multiplicative damage for you and your minions, so it's very crucial that you have that. And then you're just getting you can get it to 210%. It's insane. Skills are going to be a little bit different, but we also have the leveling path available, so you can take this build if this is your personal preference and you don't want to use that pesky Ring of Mendelna, you don't want to use that pesky Bone Spear, we don't like those spells here. So now in this build, we do without them here. Everything will be pretty much the same. Grabbing only one in this because we really only want things to be affected by Blight so that we get the damage amplification. Extra ways to create corpses in case we have to be the ones creating it. Damage reduction from Decrepify, maxing it out. And it is basically all the same. The minion stuff is very straightforward in the skill tree. And that is that for the skill tree. Really. Follow the loving path. The Paragon board, and I would have the same recommendations. Get Dead Razor to 15, then get Mage to 15, fill in the Mage board, and then get Flesh Eater and Scent of Death. Fill out this board, and then come on back over for Exploit to finish off the graph here. Some notes as well, just an option if you want to use the Ring of Mendeln, you can. Swap it out for Intercom, it's not a big deal. We'll put the rotation here in this one as well for you, so you'll have the rotation as well. And I do just want to point out, as you see some footage playing here around me, this build loses all of the player agency. This is standing there and hoping your minions are going to hit the right target, making sure you're cursing the right target, making sure you're using Blight on the right target, making sure you're doing everything you can to amplify your minion's damage, because if one mage is attacking something in Timbuktu, you're not going to do any damage. You're going to be like, well, where's my damage? I have a pile of enemies right here. What is happening? And then you notice there's a fearing mob, and then you notice that one of your mages is stuck on a wall or something. So you lose all the player agency with this build. I have a note here that I would personally recommend my original Minionmancer build, which I have a link to in this, and this is my official recommendation, is use the original one, do the Ring of Mendeln, do the Bone Spear. It feels very good, very fluid. You have full control over the battlefield if you need to. If a Bloodblister goes wherever your mages can't hit it, you can quickly run over and throw a Bone Spear and get it out of there. So that's my personal recommendation. If you are a tried and true Summoner Necromancer, this is going to be the build for you. This is going to be something that you want to do. I have a lot of footage of this on Twitch, and so it's something that if you're very curious about how I handle it, how I went about playing it, go ahead and use this build. It is still a very good build, but once again, once you get to those 80 plus dungeons, it's either kill or be killed, and right now the minions just don't cut it for that, unfortunately. Alright, cool. So now we have two very fun experimental builds. I have not invested the time and energy and gold, because we know it costs a lot of gold to respec, to test these builds out, but these are very well theory crafted builds. I have a Golem and Ring of Mendeln build, and we have a Shadow Damage Over Time build that utilizes some mages. So these are two builds, very experimental. They might be a little too squishy. They might be focused a little bit too much on damage. I haven't really fine-tuned it, but it's just something fun to have in here for you guys. If you want to try them out during Season 1, I would recommend them as well. And then just kind of play around with the Paragon nodes. It's really obvious where some of the Paragon board is at, where you want to grab some armor instead of some offensive things. But anyways, for this build, this Golem Ring of Mendeln build, there's a couple things we're taking advantage of. We're taking advantage of the Bone Prism bug that we're going to use with the power of Plunging Darkness. The Plunging Darkness is going to spawn Blight down. It's going to give us the 15% increased damage. And then we are going to have all of our minions just pop constant Ring of Mendeln procs. And this is going to be the bread and butter for a lot of the AoE damage. If we get something like a suppressor, if we get something that is not allowing us to keep Bone Prism up to get Ring of Mendeln, we're going to rely on our Golem to do damage. So our Golem is going to gain 25% damage reduction while healthy, and then 50% increase in damage. This is multiplicative damage, which is amazing. We'll be going into a lot of Golem stuff in the Paragon board. We have the same protecting aspect and aspect of disobedience, viscous for mages, blood getters here in the necklace slot to get that extra warrior, because like I said, we want to get, if we have to deal with a suppressor, you want to be able to do more damage to it and without having to drag the mages through it. So that just adds an extra melee minion. Aspect of the Void to pull everything in, Ring of Mendeln, Obvious, Grasping Veins, and Blighted Aspect. Everything that boosts our damage and can kind of translate to the Golem. You want to focus on us first, because we want Ring of Mendeln to do a lot of the work, and then our Golem will be our bouncer. We have all of the stats here laid out. We're focusing a lot on physical damage here, rather than the shadow damage over time, you might have noticed, because all of the damage that is going to be dealt is Ring of Mendeln and Golem damage, which is all physical damage. So these are the stats that I would recommend here. Where lucky hit chance on the gloves as well is something we added in. I don't have the leveling path set up for either one of these builds. What I would say is these are not, well, at least this build is not something I would recommend leveling up as. This is something you want to transition to as you get a Ring of Mendeln. The Paragon board is a little different. The first two boards are going to be identical, but we are no longer going up and getting mage damage because we don't care about the mage damage. We want golem damage. So, we're going to go right into the Hulking Monstrosity tree. And we are going to pick up as many damage nodes as we can here. We are missing a little damage down here. But this is where I'm not sure how defensive we need to be, where I need more damage on my golem. I wasn't sure about it because, again, I didn't test it out fully. But I know that this can put out some hefty damage. We've had some golem slams for about 1.3 mil as well. And that's pretty impressive. Their auto attacks are doing 600k each. Things like that. We're taking the Hulking Monstrosity Legendary Node. We're going off into the Scent of Death. We're not picking up Scent of Death, but we're here for our golem damage. This is one of the highest boards with willpower on it. So for this route, I would go up here through damage again. Get this. Get Cult Leader as you're leveling up. And then, again, not that I recommend leveling up with this build, but if you're going to, get the Cult Leader node. Then come through here, get all of this. I would not recommend doing any of these points first, but going up here, or rushing over here, because this is going to be your most damage, and then backtracking and grabbing this set of damage, and this set of damage, and then coming out here and filling out all of this. Once you have these 4 boards connected, everything up here is just endgame filler content for you. We'll eventually get the Flesh Eater node. I would recommend getting Exploit all filled out, getting the Flesh Eater node, and then coming down here and filling in these 2 defensive areas. And so that wraps up this build. Notes, it's very experimental. Try it at your own risk. If you have some extra cash lying around, some gold you want to spend, give it a shot. But yeah, let's go move on to the next build. And for the last build, another highly experimental one, Howl from Below, Black River, Shadow Damage Over Time build. We are utilizing everything that says Shadow in the toolkit here. We have Shadow Mages, we have Aspect of the Void, we have the Howl from Below, Corpse Explosion. We're using Corpse Explosion for the Shadow Damage Over Time. We don't even have Blight on our bar, but we're maxing Blight, and then we're using the aspect of Plunging Darkness to get a better version of Blight, make things vulnerable, and put them in that puddle as well. So it's quite amazing. We do have the Blight aspect to get some more damage when it does proc, because there's going to be so many puddles on the ground, you're not going to be able to see even with the changes that they made. Some key notes here. Have the extra attack. You can use either one of these. Doesn't really matter. Reapers to generate more corpses. And we're taking some defense. I don't think Shadow Damage Over Time can crit, but if it can crit, then you take this. Can't crit, take this. Again, highly experimental. Have not played around with it. But we have all of the legendary gear affixes here laid out for you. No leveling path once again, but you could take a quick gaze at it. We're not even taking any of the minion stuff. We're heavily focused on Corpse Explosion, Blight, heavily focused on this shadow portion here, and defensive things to stay alive. Paragon node. We spend a lot of points in the Wither board. We will need to get Wither because we want this to do 50% bonus damage. This is a multiplier. So sometimes those Shadow Damage Over Time numbers can hit really hard. So we are going with the same Amplify. We're doing Abyssal. We're doing Control, Scourge, darkness. Everything that you think you would take, this uses a few less boards. We do get exploit at the end here. This one is a little less straightforward. I'd recommend running straight up this path, again ignoring any defense. Getting the Abyssal Node here, because we don't want to take this route, you might as well go up and grab it. And then rushing up over here to Wither, rushing over here. And this is where I think it gets a little odd. A lot of fluff and filler stuff. Anything that's defense, I don't think you need to take for quite some time, because the gear that you're picking up and acquiring and shaping to your liking in the gear notes that I have for you, that's going to be a lot of your defense as you're leveling up. And if you're higher level, like 70, I would do like one offensive thing and then one defensive thing. So that's what I would recommend in these circumstances if you're wondering about how to survive. But essentially, there's a couple things you want to just focus on. Getting a glyph, getting a legendary node, filling out the rest until you can get to the next one. Once you have all those in, I would go back and fill in everything else. If, again, like I said earlier in the video, if D4 builds does give us a way to like highlight a path or something, I would love that. I'd love to share like a highlighted path of what my personal recommendation would be for each one of these builds. But until now, this is what we have here. And then when I'm live on Twitch, twitch.tv/jacket, you can ask me there. We can talk about what the best route might be for some of these builds. Again, not many notes here. Highly experimental build. Essentially what you want to do is let the corpses flow, explode all the corpses once everything's inside of it. So you will hit the bone prism. It's going to pull all the mobs inside of it. It's going to proc everything that you hope it's procking, and then you're going to explode a massive number of corpses on top of it after you put down Decrepify and Iron Maiden. So because that was all jumbled, I will just say it one more time here. You're going to do Bone Prison. It's going to suck everything in. You're going to put down your two corpses. You're going to put down your two curses, and then you are going to spam Corpse Explosion until the sun sets on them with this Darkness build. And that wraps up my build video. So we've come a long way from the first iteration of this build to this iteration of these 5 builds. Make sure you're checking out my other videos here. We have a lot of documentation on how minions work, and I'll have a video coming out tomorrow about what my plans for Season 1 are, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, catch me out on Twitch, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace!